horror fans rejoice. The next few months see the release of several anticipated scary movies, including Ghost Stories, which, unusually for a supernatural chiller, has already taken the critical world by storm.
You don't know everything.
It's been amazing for us because we literally phone each other and go, oh my God, have you read these reviews? We're 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. The reviews have been from broadsheet, tabloid, Twitter, just amazing. Part of that might be that tastes are changing towards horror.
I think there's always been a snobbery about horror movies, and I think that's just because they're seen as these kind of slightly trashy, low-rent horror movie. You know, it's sort of like something that's too easy to please the audience. Like, hey, you don't need much, do you? You just need like a bogeyman to leap out and go, ah!
I think, you know, horror is never popular with critics, never respectable for the obvious reasons. It's transgressive, and you know, it's dealing with stuff that people don't talk about in polite society.
We like to think of ourselves as serious people, and that means we're sort of embarrassed by direct emotional genres. Comedy and horror are the ones that suffer most.
Weirdly now, it's probably the first time in a mainstream way that it can be well regarded, and you know, we've had obviously Get Out, Oscar nominated, multi-Oscar nominated. In previous years, wouldn't have had a look in.
You're not actually sure, was it a horror movie? It was marketed as a horror movie. Lots of people say, well, that wasn't really a horror, was it? It was more like a social satire.
Last year, the debate over what does or doesn't constitute a horror film reached new heights, following a Guardian article which coined the controversial term post-horror.
When I was writing about post-horror, I was looking for a way to describe a certain type of horror movie that I'd seen around, where audiences were going to see these films and coming out disappointed because it wasn't satisfying their expectations of what a horror movie should be.
The idea of post-horror is that instead of having all the kind of what they call jump scares, which is when you'd perhaps open a door or a hand would leap out of you or something like that, which literally makes the audience go, instead of that you have a kind of creeping existential dread.
There were films like A Ghost Story, and It Comes at Night in particular. It was a film that had elements of horror stories, Cabin in the Woods, dark fear, but it didn't put them together in a way that people expected. Spoiler alert, there wasn't particularly anything that came at night.
Hit horror films that have had good reviews, like The Witch a couple of years ago, It Follows, The Babadook, all films I really like. They tend to be horror built from atmosphere and extreme psychological states, and sometimes knowledge of history, sometimes sort of acute observation of current social phenomena, but they're still horror.
The horror community didn't like it when I came up with the term post-horror.
I cannot hear this. This is not so.
I don't believe in post-horror. I really struggle with this.
There's such implicit snobbery. You wouldn't say that thing with songs. It's not a musical.
Yes, yeah, my film is called Werewolf Cheerleaders, but it's really about relationships. Yeah, you think, yeah, right.
I don't think the films themselves have changed. I think it's just the way that we talk about horror has changed.
There are some that get regarded as filth when they come out. Be that Peeping Tom, be that Night of the Living Dead. These things that should be flushed down a toilet, as the reviews will say, that are extraordinary works of art that have something profound to say.
I think every single horror film is trying to pick up on some cultural anxiety that's going on in the moment.
All right, Vince, hit him in the head, right between the eyes.
If you look at a whole bunch of horror films from the 1950s, you can see, yeah, it's the Cold War, people were worried about nuclear war or McCarthyism.
They come from another world, unleashed to take over the bodies and souls of the people of our planet.
That's another reason why at the moment, maybe, it feels that horror is suddenly grabbing the mainstream. We live in horrific times.
I do think that there are probably big things going on. particularly in Britain and America at the moment, that instill a sense of paranoia, powerlessness, crushing despair, all that stuff that leads people to go out and write scary stuff. We're living in a dark age, which is good for horror.
Boo!